Hey, welcome in. I am Jason Priester, all ClemsonTigers.com, part of the Clemson Maven multimedia platform. This is Monday Live, where we get together every week at this time, 7 p.m. every Monday, and I can already tell we are going to be talking a lot of recruiting, it looks like. Before we get to that, you know, um, don't lose the high of the weekend too quickly, man. Yeah, it was ugly. It was a very, very unexciting game to watch. But man, if you're a Clemson fan, order should be restored in your universe. I don't care how many offensive touchdowns you scored or didn't score. Um, that was a pretty good beating Clemson put on South Carolina the other night, especially defensively, man. After their first drive, that was 12 plays and 78, 82 yards, whatever it was. I forget what it was, but that 12 play touchdown drive, man, they failed. They just could not do anything, man. They had negative yards in the second quarter. They had 8 yards in the third quarter. Um, that defense just thoroughly dominated, the middle part of that game. Um, it just thoroughly dominated the middle two quarters of that game. Um, Spencer Rattler, man, he man, did he take some licks in that game? Just kept on going. Um, but yeah, took some licks in that game, man, and he just kept right on getting back up. They couldn't run the ball, they couldn't pass the ball. I was very much looking forward to that Xavier Leggett, Nate Wiggins matchup, man. We didn't get to see a whole lot of it. They moved him around so much. Nate Wiggins wasn't on him a ton of times. But um, I thought Clemson did a pretty good job of keeping him in check and just totally taking him out of the game outside of a couple of catch, a couple of I think he had a few catches, man, but he didn't do too much damage overall. Um, Khalil Barnes was outstanding in that game. Avion Terrell was outstanding in that game. Nate Wiggins, that might be the most physical I've seen him played. I think he led the team in tackles, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering that right. Um, so yeah, not very exciting football to watch unless you're a big defensive kind of guy, low scoring type of fan. Like for the third consecutive year, though, Clemson just could not do anything through the air, and I don't think they made a whole heck of a lot of effort to do it. The deeper you got into that game, and why would you? You had total control of that thing. It didn't feel like they were ever a threat to really score, especially once you got up two scores. Um, no, I don't know why we take any chances, especially considering how poorly your offense has traveled this year. It's just not been very good away from home. But 2 years ago, I think DJ Uyunglele passed for 98 yards in Columbia. Last year, I think he had 99, and then Klubnik had 100 Saturday night. So not very much through the air against those guys for 3 consecutive years now. Somehow Clemson's 2-1 in those games. Should be 3-0 if we're being quite honest. But again, if you're a Clemson fan, you should at least feel like order should be restored, or you should at least feel that way, at least for the next 365 days when it comes to this state. Um, the Tigers have won. They had owned that series since 2014 until last year, um, and now it feels like things are back the way they should be. Oh, the win. This is what I'm talking about. The win over South Carolina hardly lasted 24 hours. People losing their minds already about how many coaches should be fired and how many Porter players Dabo should get but won't. Fortunately, I have been away from the internet pretty much all day today. I I had family stuff going on today, and matter of fact, I've not even been home an hour. I wasn't even able to really prep for the show tonight the way I usually do, but so I haven't really seen a whole lot of talk online. But yeah, I get it, man. Clemson kind of righted the ship a little bit and went unbeaten in November, won their last four, beat South Carolina, looked pretty decent, beating Notre Dame, looked pretty decent, beating North Carolina. But that offense has still got some issues that need to be figured out. Even before the receivers got banged up, um, it just seems like nothing comes easy on that side of the ball. Everything is hard to come by. Even sometimes when Clemson's, to me, it didn't even feel like they rushed for 200 yards in that game Saturday night. That's just how hard those yards felt like they were to come by at times. Not all of them, just at times. It just didn't feel like they had rushed for 200 yards. So, I mean, I do think that Dabo Swinney's got to take a long, hard look at that offense and see where some improvements can be made and how you go about making those improvements. Does that mean making tweaks to that coaching staff? I would be very surprised if we get to spring practice and the exact same coaching staff's in place. I fully expect some tweaks. I don't think there's going to be any major overhaul or anything like that, but I do think that staff's going to be tweaked. Um, the only question is where and how. I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think status quo is going to remain in place. As far as the portal, um, I fully expect Clemson to go to the try, at least make an effort to bring in some guys out of the portal this year. Um, Offensive line, it would be probably my top thing, and not because they're struggling landing guys in this class. That's not why I think they need to go to the portal. I think they might need a lot of that might depend on you know who doesn't come back next year that has eligibility left, and where you think Ryan Linthicum is, because you're losing your center, and that's the biggest piece to your offensive line is you need a solid center. And if you don't have faith that Linthicum's ready to take over, you've got to go find somebody that can. So I think you're going to see Clemson make some effort to address that offensive line through the portal, maybe wide receiver, and maybe defensive end. Um, Whether they end up getting anybody, I don't know. Portal recruiting is different than high school recruiting. A lot of those guys are in there looking for the biggest payday. So it's just going to depend on the guy, the situation, and what he's looking for. Recruiting keeps falling off. He won't have no choice but to use the portal. Recruiting is my main concern. I don't think recruiting's really falling off. Matter of fact, I think it's picked back up the past couple of cycles. I think they've absolutely killed it in recruiting 2023. I think they killed it in 2024, except the offensive line for whatever reason. And I don't think there's one specific reason. I think each guy had his own reason for picking to go somewhere else. I've said it many times. I think every recruitment's like its own different little story, man. It plays out differently. But yeah, Clemson's struggling to land offensive linemen in this class, but I don't think that means they need to hit the. I don't think that's why they'll have to hit the portal for offensive linemen next year. No guy they were recruiting was going to come in and start immediately, anyways. Um, you're only losing one starter, but I do have questions on whether Ryan Linthicum is ready and whether he'll be able to secure that starting job next year moving forward. Um, as far as offensive linemen in this class, yeah, it's been brutal. 0 for 3 on the in-state guys. I've always maintained you're never getting two of those guys to begin with, but you got to take your shot. The bigger thing to me is going 1 for 6 with the guys that you invited to the big official visit weekend. That is well below what Clemson usually sees as a hit rate. Well below. You expect to hit on 3 of those 6, and you only landed 1. I think NIL factored in with some, at least 1, probably 2. I think depth chart factored in some with 1. Some they want Clemson does have some depth there. They haven't recruited terribly along the offensive line in the last few cycles. Matter of fact, I think they killed it offensive line the past 2 cycles, but they have not done it in this cycle. Saw Andrew Dennis today committed to Illinois. he wasn't even supposed to announce to the All-American Bowl in January. Went ahead and did it today. A guy from up in Michigan, former Michigan State commit, took his official visit last weekend for the North Carolina game, last weekend for the North Carolina game. From my understanding, Clemson killed it on the visit. I think he wanted to stay closer to home based on everything I've been told, anyways. It was just that the distance was a hurdle they could not overcome. But I mean, if you want to talk about offensive linemen in this particular class, yeah, recruiting is falling off at offensive line in this class. And I'll give you defensive ends. Clemson has not been able to recruit defensive ends the way they were in the past for whatever reason. They've struggled with defensive ends and they've struggled with offensive linemen. Offensive linemen in this class, defensive ends the past couple. Other than that, I don't think it's falling off all that much, man. I think you got a solid quarterback in Vizina on board from the 2023 class. I think Blake Heber's got an extremely high ceiling. I think you've got two superstars coming in at receiver in this current recruiting class. I think you got another superstar coming in at tight end. And what they've done along that defensive, not just the defensive line, but what they did on the defensive side of the ball in the last recruiting class. Holy crap, man! Those freshmen, man, the future is bright on that side of the ball. And you haven't even seen all those guys yet. We used to get mainly 4 and 5 stars. Now we ate up with 3 stars. Yeah, I don't know how true that is. I would, if you want to look at offensive linemen, Clemson's recruited the guys that Clemson's landed on offensive line. Last class before that, almost all of them were blue chip guys. Almost every one of them. Most of the receivers have been 4 and 5 stars outside of Tyler Brown. Ronnie Hannafin, Noble Johnson, they were both 4 stars. Antonio Williams, Adam Randall, both 4 stars. Jake Briningstool was the number 1 tight end in the country. All those defensive linemen were 4 and 5 stars. Maybe you might have some 3 stars there on the back end. At corner, you might have a few back there. But I'd take Mike Reed's evaluations over anybody in this country. 3-star, 2-star, 4-star, wouldn't matter to me. I trust that guy over anybody. I think Grisham and maybe Richardson are gone. The passing game just has been abysmal for 3 years. Austin hasn't been here long enough, but if there's a home run out there, I would go get him. I don't know who's going and who's gone, but I'm not sure I see Kyle Richardson being let go. We'll see. Yeah. Khalil Barnes was another 3-star. I mean, there's a couple of those 3-star guys that's killing it right now. But man, Clemson's got the 5th highest blue chip ratio in the country. The current roster right now, 5th highest blue chip ratio in the country. So that tells you right there aren't nearly as many 3 stars as is being made out to be here. Any new? I think Dabo brings Jeff Scott back to work with the offense in some type of way. I have no idea, man. I don't think Garrett Riley's leaving, and I don't know if Jeff Scott's going to be satisfied with coming back as a wide receiver coach. We'll see. I could absolutely see him taking on some kind of administrative role. I could absolutely see him being back. I don't know though. We'll have to just wait and see. Any news on Jordan Allen from Buford? I was shocked that we offered him at 5'7". Hey, if you watched him work out, you wouldn't be shocked. That cat is he is really good, man. Really good. That's why most of the top programs are after him. Um, I haven't touched base with him. He visited twice this year though. He Clemson's high on his list right now, but it's probably going to be hard to pluck him out of Georgia. I think Georgia's high on his list too. But the game's kind of changing, man. The offenses are evolving. You don't have to be 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" to be a successful wide receiver. You need these smaller, twitchier, faster, explosive type, wideouts you can run out there in the slot. Look at Tyler Brown. I mean, I know he's not 5'7", but I mean he's a smaller guy, and he's kind of been the best Clemson's had out there this year. Antonio Williams was 6 foot tall, if I'm not mistaken. Um, the game's changed a little bit, and you kind of seeing teams gravitate to small receivers. But Jordan Allen's a dog, man. If you can land him, Clemson's only offered a handful of guys or a handful of 2025 receivers, and he's one of the few that's got an offer right now. Can't fire Grisham, in my opinion. Receivers did improve, and the class is exceptional. See, I'm torn on Grisham. I don't think receivers have played terribly this year. I just don't think they have the talent they had in the past, and everybody wants to dump on him about not being able to develop them. I see the guys that Jeff Scott recruited and brought to Clemson leave Clemson, go out to other coaching staffs, and they still don't develop. So I don't know if they got a developmental problem more so than they just missed on a bunch of guys. Um, Maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Um, I thought Bo Collins still had room to grow as a receiver, and he hadn't yet scratched his ceiling. I think I was wrong, man. I think he's plateaued. I think he is what he is. I think he's. I don't know how much more developing he can do. I've seen. I think Antonio Williams, the little we saw of him this year, was better than what we saw last year. Um, you know, Other than that, it's hard to gauge some of those guys and how much they develop. Can't stay healthy long enough. Is that a coaching issue? Is that a strength and conditioning issue? Is that a bad luck issue? I don't have an answer to that. I just I think sometimes, man, fans jump to the coaching thing very quickly, and sometimes I think that the issues are deeper than that. Again, I'm kind of torn on Grisham. I think I've said a few times I thought he was one of the guys that probably needed to have a good year, and I thought the receivers got dumped on, especially over the first half of the season, more so than they had. They got dumped on more so than they had earned. I thought they played better than some people were making out. The one thing that I do think they could be better at is blocking on the perimeter. Man, that there's been windows to throw into, and guys are creating separation, especially over the first half of the season. And quarterback just wasn't seeing them. He don't look that way. He's only reading one guy or whatever. I don't know what the deal is there, but there's been many times guys have been open. He don't even see them. Why can't we get the ball to Briningstool more? You've got a Georgia program 45 minutes away that has had the best tight end in the game in the country for years now. We can't steal anything in scheme from them. First of all, I would not even say Jake Briningstool and Brock Bowers' name in the same sentence right now. I don't think they're even comparable. Um, I think speaking of developing, I think Jake Briningstool still got some developing to do. Yeah, he's a big target, man. But like I've heard, I think it was Garrett Riley that said earlier in the year, if you're big, you got to play big. I don't think Briningstool always plays his size. I thought he was terrible over the first several games of the year. Thought he had a stretch there where he was pretty good over the middle part. Then he kind of disappeared here again lately. Um, you can chalk that up to they've just not made a whole lot of effort to push the ball down the field. They were just bound and determined to lean more heavily on that running game over the past few weeks. and try to win football games. They didn't care if it was pretty. They didn't care about the explosives. So I think you got to factor that in. I do think Briningstool's played better over the second half than he did in the first half, but I thought he was terrible starting the season, the first few weeks of the season. There was a few routes he ran, man. I don't even know if you could call them routes. He's not the best blocker in the world either, but he's not the biggest tight end. He's tall, but he's not big, thick. He's not a big, heavy, physical guy. He's more of a pass catching tight end. But I mean, he should be a matchup nightmare, right? But he hasn't been. It hasn't panned out that way. And I'll end it by saying I don't think it's got anything necessarily to. I don't think it's. I think you're trying to imply it's got to do with scheme. I'm not sure it's all about scheme. I think some of the blame lies with him. Maybe not all of it, but I think at least some of it does. I think you also got a quarterback that has not been very good at scanning the field for a big part of the season. You got a quarterback that's still developing, that is not nearly as far along as most people expected him to be at this point. So I think that plays into that too. Lamo Man says he was referring to the current class about the 3 stars. Yeah, well, a lot of those guys have gotten bumped down from 4-star to 3-star because they've been committed for so long and they don't sell subscriptions. Several of them have. Let's see. I'll start off by saying it's criminal that David Ajamame is still a 3-star. It's criminal that Heaven Brown Schuler got bumped down so far. Champ Thompson, another one that got bumped down. All those other guys had always been 3 stars. Darian Mayo is one of the few that has got a big bump. Heck, I think even Corey and Gibson got a bump down. A lot of those guys have been bumped down to where they were originally. If you're that worried about stars, man, I would just suggest cutting on David Ajamame's film and watch what he did in the toughest. I think what is the toughest region in Georgia high school football. Cut on the film and watch Heaven Brown Schuler, same with Champ Thompson. Drew Woodaz is one of those 3 stars. I'm sure you're talking about. So was his brother. He don't play like a 3-star. And Ashton Hampton's another one. I go back to the Mike Reed thing on that. You either trust that guy or you don't. He don't miss on many. Is there any truth to the rumor that Jeff Scott has a role with the new 110 society? I don't know, man. If he does, I think that if he's involved with that, then that'll kind of preclude him from joining the coaching staff, right? I don't think you can do both. Bingo. The wide receivers, the schools are going to the smaller and quicker wide receivers. I remember 2 years ago, Clemson fans were just moaning and groaning because the receiver room was full of the bigger bodied, slower 50-50 ball type guys, and there wasn't enough variety. None of the smaller guys with burst and quickness and explosiveness. And say what you will about Tyler Grisham, I do think he has done a good job of trying to bring some of that variety back into the room with guys like Stellato and Troy Brown and I guess heck, you could probably even throw Noble Johnson into that mix too, even though he's a little bit taller than those guys. I see him more as one of those smaller type receivers than a big boundary type guy. Um, and then they were go after Mike Matthews, who would fit that mold in this class. So I do credit Grisham for that. He's brought a little bit more variety back to that room. What's your thoughts on Clemson not throwing down the field, receiver, Cade, or both? Both, and throw the offensive line in there. Earlier in the year, they just weren't able to protect. After the I haven't seen the numbers since the Miami game, but after the Miami game, Cade Klubnik was getting pressured on like 38% of his dropbacks. He got pressured on more than 50% of his dropback attempts in the Miami game. That is not the recipe for a successful downfield passing attack. That ain't gonna get it done. Again, I've said it all season long, especially earlier in the season. I didn't really notice it Saturday night. But there's been guys creating separation. There's been guys open. Um, either Cade's not throwing it to him, it's going to his check down man really quick, or he never even looks at him. There was one game, I swear, I don't think they gave him more than one read. Because he just it kind of looked obvious to me. I don't think they got a lot of trust the way he's turned the ball over this year and the way those turnovers have so often going back the other way. I don't think they had a whole lot of faith in that passing game, especially away from home. It's not showing much to have a lot of faith in, to be quite honest. I think you got to have Cade Klubnik do a lot of growing over the offseason if you want to get back to where you want to be. Because what you saw out of him this year ain't going to get it done. I think you got to be better at receiver too. I mean, it's not just him. I think it's the whole thing. I honestly believe Dabo Swinney thought that getting Garrett Riley in there and revamping that offense and retooling that scheme would cure their ills. And it didn't take long to realize that it was going to take more than just revamping the scheme. You might, again, there might be a spot or two on that staff you need to address. And you don't have the talent at receiver as you used to have 2-3 years ago. That's just it. That's just cold hard truth. I think they missed on a bunch of guys at receiver. All those highly touted guys they brought in on the back of Jeff Scott's tenure and since. Hey, none of them's been what none of them have turned out to be what they were supposed to be coming out of high school. Even guys that aren't here anymore. E.J. Williams, Kari Collins, Frank Latson. Heck, he was a 5-star. Bo Collins. Troy Stellato was a highly rated guy. I'm sure I'm forgetting some guys. It's just off the top of my head. And then you also saw South Carolina do it Saturday night, man. A lot of defenses went 3-3-5 against Clemson this year, or Clemson saw a lot of 3-3-5 this year. And teams run out to limit the downfield. They try to keep everything in front of them. What kind of injury does Antonio Williams have? He hurt his foot, came back and hurt it again. What is more likely, changing offensive line coach or changing wide receiver coach? I don't know, man. I don't know. I wouldn't even venture to lay odds on that. I would just say that I do not think the staff will look the same come spring practice as it does today. I don't know. I don't think there's going to be some big overhaul. I'm not sure. I thought Clemson's offensive line played fairly well last year under Thomas Austin, especially running the ball. I thought they could have been better, a little bit better at pass pro, but running the ball, I thought they played great. But they've struggled adapting to this new scheme that Riley's installed, man, the pulling and the trapping and all that stuff. They've not responded well to it. Every time, well, I shouldn't say every time, but a lot of the times when I see those guards get out and start pulling, they just look slow. It just doesn't look like their strong suit. I'm not sure that the guys Clemson recruited are the best fit for what Riley wants to do on offense. I mean, we saw him go strictly back to the zone blocking scheme against Notre Dame, and slowly but surely we started seeing more, pulls and stuff used. After that, I saw it plenty of times Saturday night. And Clemson's, I don't know, man, they just look slow when they're doing it. That might just be me. I'm not an offensive line expert by any stretch, but they just look slow a lot of the times when they get out there and start trying to pull and move in space. I thought they were much better when they just went hat on a hat and took the guy in front of them and didn't get so cute with it. But as far as which is more likely, I don't know. You know, Austin's only been there 2 years. Again, I thought the offensive line played well for the most part last year. I thought he killed it in recruiting last year. He's definitely not killed it in recruiting this year. And I'm not sure that is all his fault. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, he is the position coach, because so the buck kind of stops with him. And they've not looked good at times. Whether that's the scheme change or whatever. He's still the coach. So I don't know. I don't know. I wish I had to answer that. I wish I could answer that one for you, but I don't know. I'll just say I'll be surprised if the staff looks the same as it does today once we get to spring practice. Receivers do not block anyone. Yeah, they're not very good out on the perimeter, that is for sure. I remember when Clemson wide receivers used to take pride in their blocking out on the perimeter. It doesn't quite seem that way no more. And, I don't want to lump them all in together, because I'm not saying they're all that way, but I do think some of those guys blocking is not their strong suit. Absolutely. He runs horrible routes. I'm going to go out on a limb here and make a wild guess that you are referring to Jay Briningstool, who we were talking about earlier. Receivers not blocking is effort and desire. You get no arguments from me. I don't think blocking is a couple of those guys' strong suit. Um, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say they're not putting in the effort. Um, I don't know. I can't. I think it's not my job. That's to be determined by somebody else above my pay grade. Yeah, blocking's coached, no doubt. Desire can't be coached. You either got it or you don't. Um, if you don't have a desire to do it, I I don't know. I don't know if many coaches is going to pound it into you. But yeah, blocking's about effort for sure. Um, and Clemson's receivers blocking is not their strong suit. That is for sure. It's not all of them, but some of them. I think I'll use Adam Randall as an example. I think his blocking to start the season was horrendous. I think it was terrible. And you didn't see him play a whole heck of a lot for a little while. And I mean, he went a couple games without even playing 10 snaps. And I think it got better as the season went on. Um, I don't know what's wrong with that dude. I used to watch him just run dudes over at Myrtle Beach, man. He'd play safety some and he'd be headhunting out there. And you talk about a guy that played with physicality, but we haven't seen it translate to this level for whatever reason. Um, again, you can't get me to say that desire can be coached, but yeah, blocking's definitely coached. Briningstool will have competition in that tight end room coming. Either he will improve or be surpassed. I think he's going to have some competition. Absolutely. I think Olsen Pat Henry has an extremely high ceiling. I think he was extremely undervalued as a recruit. A lot of that probably due to the fact that he played wide receiver in college. I think Briningstool played a lot of wide receiver in high school. I mean, their next tight end coming in, Beckinger, he's played a lot of tight end in high school. So it's an adjustment. Those guys going from playing that much wide receiver to playing tight end. Josh Knapp actually talked about that adjustment a couple weeks ago. It's not an easy one to make, but yeah, he's going to have some competition next year. I think it's going to be hard to keep Olsen Pat Henry off the field. I'm not saying he's going to win the job or anything like that, but I think he's good enough to have opportunities. Or I think I think he will be that next year. I mean, heck, you saw him, they burned his red shirt the other night. He had already played in 4 games and they still played him Saturday night. Yes, he's absolutely was still a work in progress. So is Sapp to an extent, to a degree. Bradley Shaw. Bradley Shaw, I don't have anything new on him. I just say the same thing I said last week because I don't think he's going to take any more visits. He's visited Clemson earlier in the season, then he was there again a couple weeks ago, and didn't take, far as I can tell, best I can tell, and talking with somebody I know, he's not taking any visits in between those 2 visits. So they've only been to Clemson. I think it's just a matter of when, not if, how he wants to announce. He's a guy that he doesn't talk to media, he doesn't do interviews. Everything's very close to the vest. Doesn't publicize visits and stuff like that. So hasn't said anything about an announcement date. I don't even know if he's going to sign during the early signing period. I don't think anybody knows. That's how tight-lipped they are about this thing. But I do think, it's still just. I really believe it's a matter of when, not if. And that will be Clemson's third. If they do land him, which I think they will, that's going to be Clemson's third linebacker taking this class. And if my count is right, that will put them at their number. Because they were below the number for this season, especially I think they were 2 under after Dudley left. And you take 3, and I think they're only going to lose 1. I think that'll put them right at their number. Any outlook on who would transfer out? Can't see a scenario where this whole team will come back. No, there's going to be transfers. Yeah, that's just the era we live in now. The whole team's not coming back. I don't think Shipley's coming back. I think I get the impression that he's kind of always wanted to be on the 3-year plan. But beyond who's going to transfer out, I don't know, man. I can see some of those offensive linemen that have been surpassed by transferring out. If they decide they want to go to the portal to find a starting center, what incentive does Ryan Linthicum have to stick around? So there's some offensive linemen I could see transferring out. As far as starters, I don't know. I mean, I think Toriano Pride's a candidate. You know, he kind of got passed by some of those young corners. I don't know about Jaden Lucas because he's been hurt. I don't know if he's been passed by or just been hurt. But as well as Avion Terrell played down the back end, and as well as Khalil Barnes has played, as good as Shelton Lewis looked in his limited opportunities, I think Toriano Pride's a guy to keep an eye on. You know, I think he played the best game of his career when he had to start in place of Sheridan Jones against Wake Forest, and we've barely seen him since. You know, that's how good those younger guys are, and that's not a knock on Toriano. I just think that's how good those other guys are, and I think he's just been out recruited. So he's a guy I would keep an eye on. Um, other than that, I don't know. It's anybody's guess. It's there's going to be some movement though. The whole team coming back. That's just don't happen very often. Not criticizing what Cade throws down the field. It seems to be a high rainbow. Why do you think this is like a barn straight? Yeah, his throws do tend to hang up in the air a little too long at times. He does not have the arm strength that say a Deshaun Watson had. Definitely nothing like Trevor Lawrence had. I mean, I don't think he's got poor arm strength. I just don't think he's got elite level arm strength. I think he tries in high school, he'd make up for that lack of arm strength with his accuracy. His accuracy's kind of been off a little bit at times this season, especially early in games. Seems like he comes out amped up and a lot of his balls are high, especially throwing over the middle. Man, he's going to get a guy killed if he doesn't bring some of those throws down. But yeah, I would say he just doesn't have the arm strength as some of those elite level quarterbacks. So they tend to hang up a little bit. He needs to get stronger before next year. He needs to put on another 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds. Um, he still looks like a little guy out there compared to the guys he's playing against. Um, so I think this is I said it earlier. I think he's still got some developing to do, and I should have been more specific because not just as a player, but I think physically too. And he'd probably be the first one to tell you that. Matter of fact, I, I, I know Dabo's mentioned that at least once, and he's probably said it a couple of times that he needs to get stronger and bigger. What is your guess on Tink, Hannafin, and Noble as far as potential? I don't know about Tink. I've not seen him play enough receiver that I didn't even watch a lot of his film playing receiver. I just because I kind of always assumed that he was going to be a receiver and then he'd get moved to DB. But we'll see. But I think Hannafin has got some potential. Um, he's got some wheels. He can move. I think I don't think he's going to be that number one boundary guy that's going to dominate games or anything. I think he'd be a nice complimentary piece. I still think Noble Johnson's got an extremely high ceiling. I just think he was a guy that needed a year. I thought it was plainly obvious in the spring. But again, I don't. He's not that number one boundary type guy who's gonna take over games for you. I think he's a good. He could be a good complimentary and good number two. Um, but he's got that twitchiness, man. He's quick. He's got burst, and from what I've seen, he's got really good hands. He can move. He's got good. He moves well laterally. He gets in and out of his breaks really well. He really impressed me when he came and worked out at camp. That's where he picked up his offer when he came here and worked out at camp last summer of 2022. I thought he was probably the best receiver I saw those 3 days or whatever it was. But Some guys just need a year, and I think he was one that needed a year. But I do think he can contribute next year. Not sure about Tink, and Hannafin. I have watched his film. He plays up there in Massachusetts. It's a little bit different than playing down in Georgia. Just haven't seen enough of him. I don't know. I think he can. I think he can be a contributor. I mean, of all those guys, he was the highest rated one. I mean, if you go back and look at their recruiting rankings, so, I mean, but I think he was rated as an athlete though, at least at 24/7, anyways. But I do think Noble can be a nice complementary piece, and I think there's a spot for Hannafin too. I don't see either one of them as these big, dominant number one type receivers. Lots of drops Saturday night. Absolutely too many. Um, Tyler Brown, Josh Sapp, Olsen Pat Henry, even the sure-handed Troy Stellato had a critical drop on a third down. If you just take if they can, and there were more than that. That's just the four I remember off the top of my head. I think Klubnik was 15 of 27. If those are four, but just those four balls are caught, man, the passing numbers look a little different. I mean, he's not throwing for 250. Don't get me wrong, but they look a little different. He's 19 of 27 instead of 15 of 27. I thought he threw the ball well the other night. The only throw he probably wishes he had back was the long one that got picked off. I think he got it a little bit too. I think he got it a little too far outside. He probably should have hung that thing up a little on the inside shoulder more so than the outside. But yeah, man, they had balls hitting them dead in the hands that they just did not come down with, which was a problem at times earlier in the season in a couple games, but hasn't been so much here lately. Stellato had the one drop. Some forums already treating him like he's a hack. How many times you heard me say message boards get too toxic? I think Stellato has been a very, that guy's helped you this year. He's helped you far more than anyone ever expected, and when you really needed it, because nobody saw Antonio Williams being out for pretty much the whole year. You needed that guy to step in and play a role, and I think he's played well for the most part. I'd like to see him use him down the field a little bit more next year. Too much, which I could say that about a lot of the receivers, but I think Stellato is a guy that has those type of skills. No, he's not a boundary guy, but he's got the versatility where you can play him inside or outside. He's got. I think he's still got plenty enough speed. He might not be quite as fast as he was before the injuries, but I still think he's plenty fast enough. When you're watching him play live, you can tell he's got quickness. I'd like to see him use more down the field, man. Everything to him's always short, intermediate stuff. Just trying to maybe get him the ball out in space. I'd like to see them. He's a pretty good route runner. I'd like to see them take advantage of him down the field. Let him try and get some more opportunities down the field next year. Do you think the scheme change this year impacted recruiting? Best I can tell, no. I wouldn't even have thought it was gonna hurt the on field. I didn't expect the style of play of the offensive line to change a whole lot. I figured even in the new offense, the inside zone was gonna be a staple, and they'd still lean heavily on the zone blocking. But that is not the way it turned out. They ran a lot of counters and traps and called for a lot of the pulling and stuff. And even if I'd have known that going in, I wouldn't have thought these guys would have struggled with that as badly. Um, I think those guys like to play that style, or some of them do, anyways. A lot of offensive linemen love that on the hat stuff. Um, I don't, not best of my knowledge, no. I don't think it hurt it or impacted recruiting. I think NIL hurt. I think that played a part with a guy or two. I know at least one. The depth chart did. He thought he had opportunities to get on the field quicker. And I'm talking about the 6 guys that were at the official visit weekend in June, not necessarily about the 3 in-state guys. I think one of them wanted to play in the SEC. That's 3 of them right there. And I think depth chart impacted at least 2 of them, so that's 4 of them. 5th one, I'm not real sure about. He ended up at Auburn. No, can't remember. Either Auburn or Georgia Tech. I can't remember. It's been so long ago, but I would say NIL and depth chart. And another thing that hurts recruiting for Clemson when it comes to offensive line, especially when you're going up against programs like Notre Dame and Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama. All those programs have a track record of putting guys into the league. Clemson doesn't have much of one. That gets used against them all the time on the recruiting trail. Saturday was weird seeing all the tight ends playing, but not the freshman receivers playing. The fact that I don't know how many snaps he played, but Noble Johnson played Saturday night. I don't know if it was just special teams or I didn't ever see him play, but I know he got credit for playing. It was his fourth game, if I'm not mistaken. Looking at the participation chart, they got him marked down as playing. I just don't remember seeing him. It was probably special teams, but the fact that you didn't see him over the last couple of games, with as banged up as they've been, that just tells you how he's not ready. Same thing with Hannafin. They're just not ready. And Noble Johnson's a guy that enrolled in spring. Hannafin didn't enroll early, so he was behind the 8 ball from the jump. But I'll be the first to admit I thought Noble Johnson would avoid the red shirt and play some this year, contribute a little bit. Been a little I was a little disappointed that he was not able to, but I thought it was plainly obvious back in the spring that he was not going to be ready. You could just see it. If the receivers can't block, stop throwing the ball to the sidelines. The receivers have to block to make those plays where, hey, I warned you guys, man, that the wide receiver screens and the bubble screens and all that stuff was not going away, that it was a big part of what Garrett Riley did at TCU. But yeah, you gotta. I go back to the Florida State play, man, when everybody crapped on Cade for making the wrong decision in the RPO. If you break it down, man, it really wasn't the wrong decision. He had the run pass option. They had 3 receivers on that side of the field matched up against 2 Florida State defensive backs. Throws the ball to one. You got a man on a man. He should be able to pick up a yard. One of them standing there with his hands on his hips. I mean, it is what it is. I just think Clemson doesn't have any dogs there at receiver right now, man. They don't have guys that like to get out there and mix it up, or if they do, not very many that just like that aspect of the game. New wide receiver coach next year, drops not getting open or separating. And I've said it 40 times, man. I've seen Clemson receivers getting open and creating plenty of separation this year, man. This narrative that they're never open or never create separation ain't true. And I don't know how you can. I don't know if drops is coaching. Again, I'm kind of torn on the Christian thing. I don't know if it's all him he's the easy target because Clemson don't have receivers the way they used to have them. Again, I'll say the same thing I said earlier in case you missed it. Jeff Scott's last batch of recruits, guys like Ladson, Bobo Collins in there, Takari Collins, EJ Williams, those guys, all highly rated guys. All of them but one playing at different schools under different coaching staffs still haven't developed. Unless we saying Jeff Scott's the only guy that can develop them. I don't know if it's as much of a coaching problem or just an evaluation problem, and you missing on dudes. You don't have guys on the outside that want to mix it up, man. I just don't see no fight in them. And for me, I think you either got that or you don't. I don't know that it can be coached into you. I don't know how you can. I don't know how Drops his own coaching. It ain't something Clemson struggled with a whole lot this year. I thought they did a couple times earlier in the season, but for the most part, Drops hasn't been some huge issue this year. It was Saturday night. I just don't know that Drops is a big. How do you coach Drops? I mean, the guy should be able to catch the damn ball. That's what a receiver does. That's all they do in practice every single day. Wonder if Bo is thinking a fresh start would be better for him. I don't know. I've not heard anything about Bo. Sometimes, I think Bo's hit his ceiling at Clemson. I think he is what he is. Was he going to be better somewhere else? I don't know. I think, a better quarterback's absolutely going to make him look better. Make no mistake. Um, those receivers have not gotten the best of quarterback play the past couple years, through 3 years, matter of fact. Um, maybe he does. Maybe he likes it where he is. I don't know. He is a long ways from home. I can't want to say his family's out here with him, but don't hold me to that 100%. I know they're at all the games, at least most of them, anyways. But no, I don't know. The fact that they're only taking 2 wide receivers in this class leads me to believe they think all those guys are coming back. Any potential recruiting flips? If you mean Clemson going out at the flipping guys, I don't think so. We'll see. As it stands right now, it's not looking that way. But I don't know. Maybe you see where you are at early signing day and reassess and see if somebody's still out there that you think you have a shot with. Clemson doesn't tend to get involved with guys this late in the game. If they were going to target somebody, it would be I think it would be somebody they already had been involved with in the past, and they backed off for whatever reason. The guy committed elsewhere, or Clemson decided to go in a different direction, or whatever reason. So if you see them target somebody like that, be looking for guys that they've already had some communication with. But as it stands right now, I don't think there are any big flips coming. What did Dabo mean by some healthy pruning a few weeks ago? Is he going to tell some kids to hit the portal? I don't think Dabo's ever going to actively cut guys, ever. Not the way some people in the fan base want him to do. You know, I do think there have been guys told that they'd be better off transferring and going and seeking playing time elsewhere. I do think there have been kids who have been given a little nudge out the door. And yeah, I think that's absolutely what he was talking about, is maybe, nudging some guys out the door to make room for some guys that want it. My understanding, Dabo was off the charts the week of the Notre Dame game, that Monday, and people trace it back to that phone call from the guy on the coach's show. From my understanding, though, he was going off on the people, everybody inside that building before that phone call that afternoon. I'm guessing somebody was gonna draw his ire on that show that night, regardless, no matter who it was. But yeah, I do think you're gonna see some changes, man. Um, from my understanding, they were all told, coaches, players, that they were all coaching and playing for their job the last month. That they was either, get on board or get left behind. Another thing I've said here many times, Dabo Swinney doesn't like to lose. He does not like to lose. Good friend of mine who's a big Gamecock fan texted me yesterday. He said he thinks one of Clemson's biggest problem is Dabo's not as hungry as he used to be. Doesn't have the same fire. And while I will readily admit that I do think some complacency set into the program for a couple years there, I do think that fire has been relit. I don't think that guy likes to lose. I think that he really believed bringing Garrett Riley in was going to really cure a lot of their problems on offense and the quarterback change as well. Didn't work out that way. So yeah, I think more changes are on the way, and I think you're going to see some guys leave, and I think you're going to see them make an effort to bring some guys in. Are they going to bring in 7, 8, 9, 10 guys from the portal? No, but I do think you will see them address or attempt to address multiple positions in the portal this offseason. Then you'll hear the narrative change. It won't be that Dabo's totally against using the portal. It'll be he's not using it the right way. Think Will Shipley might go to the portal and go back home and play another year. I think Shipley's NFL bound. We'll see. And, hopefully, if you're a Clemson fan, hopefully that keeps Mafah on board another year. I, I just, I get the impression that Shipley's always been on the 3-year plan. He's already graduated, made sure he got graduated in 3 years. So we'll see. When I heard him say it, one player that came to mind was Patterson. Dabo always seemed frustrated about his lack of contributing whatsoever. So just guessing he prunes a few like that. Yeah, I could see Patterson being a portal candidate. I could see Cade Denoff being a portal candidate. There's several guys. Mitchell Mays, Brian Tucker, some of those guys along the offensive line. Trent Howard. Again, Toriano Pride. You know, there's a few guys I think it's worth keeping an eye on as far as who's going to bolt. Do we have a great running back coming in, a red shirt? It seems like we don't recruit well at the running back position. Clemson has routinely recruited running back fairly well, I would say. Heck, your highest rated recruit didn't even stay for half a season, ended up transferring out into Marcus Bowman. But I mean, we've seen under Dabo Swinney, you've seen guys like Spiller and James Davis and Andre Ellington and Wayne Gallman and Travis Etienne. I think they've recruited pretty well. They hit a little 2-year stretch there, man, and then they landed Shipley and Mafah in the same class. And then after that, they hit a little 2-year stretch where they had trouble landing guys. And when you got two guys like Shipley and Mafah at the top of the depth chart, it's going to make it tough to land top-notch running backs. So you end up finding yourself, signing a Keith Adams, and then in the next class signing Jay Haynes and Jarvis Green, two guys who I thought were both very underrated. So Green and Haynes both redshirted this year. I think both have some upside. I think Clemson's going to get one of their running backs. I don't think both those guys are leaving. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think both are going to leave. So I think you're going to get one back. So you don't need one of those guys, to be the guy next year. But I think Keith Adams Jr. kind of gives you something similar to what you have in Phil Mafah. He's a big bruising type running back, straight ahead guy. Definitely not the fleetest of foot. Jay Haynes is a smaller, faster, twitchier guy. Gives you that home run threat every time he touches the ball. He's a little bit smaller. I don't think he weighs 190 pounds right now, so he needs a little bit more bulk. Jarvis Green, to me, he's kind of an X factor. I'm not sure what he brings. I don't know if he's an every down back or not. I do think he can help you. I just don't know if he's an every down back. We'll see. I mean, he's not as fast as Jay Haynes. They got a kid coming in this class named David Ajamame, who's one of those guys that was a 4-star and is now suddenly a 3-star. I think he's severely underrated. He's been one of the best backs in Georgia this year. He's just been killing it. Really didn't start until his senior year in high school. Runs a 10.89 100 meter, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering that right. So you got him on the way, and then you got a top 100 player coming in 2025. So I think you're in good hands at running back, assuming you get one of the two you have right now back. If you don't get one of those guys back, it's something to keep an eye on going to next year, because I don't know that you won't have to lean. I don't know if you want to rely on Ajamame coming in and being the guy as a freshman. And I don't know if Green or Haynes are every down backs. You might have to, maybe they together they can get the job done. We'll see. But again, I do think one comes back and makes all that moot. Yeah, I don't know if it's favoritism. No, I think Shipley's a little bit more explosive. I think Shipley's a little bit better of a pass blocker, and I think Shipley's a little bit better in the passing game. I think that's why they went with him, for the most part. I would have liked to have seen Mafah get more touches. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's some big travesty that Shipley was starting ahead of Mafah, or even if Mafah was starting ahead of Shipley. I think they both bring a lot of good things to the table. Favoritism is not the word I would use by any stretch of the imagination. I think they put the best guy. I think they put the guy on the field they think gives them the best chance to win. Yeah, I tend to agree with this. I love Mafah. He had a tough start. He had the big fumble at Duke, the missed block against FSU. And to me, it's a little bit deeper than that. I thought both Shipley and Mafah had a stretch of several games, man, where they just looked uninspired. Um, even on the rare occasion there was a running lane there, they were slow to hit it. And I'm talking about both of them. I thought for about a 4 or 5 game stretch there, I thought Mafah, he looked like he'd go down if you blew on him, man. He was easy to bring down, and the same for Shipley. But man, when Mafah got the opportunity to be the guy, he looked like what I always thought he could be. And then I thought he kind of reverted a little bit Saturday night, and at times. I didn't think he looked Saturday night the way he did against Notre Dame. I also don't think the running lanes were there the way they were against Notre Dame. Although, again, they rushed for over 200 yards. But, for me, it all starts up front, man. I think both those guys have had frustrating seasons. And Mafah's season got off to a disastrous start, absolutely. And I do think the missed block against Florida State, caused maybe affected the trust issue. And when it comes to pass pro, again, I think they always trusted Shipley a little bit more in that regards, even though I don't think either one of them excels in that area. Mafah and Shipley both have fumble problems. Makes me think it's a Spiller problem. Mafah didn't have fumble problems before this season. Um, if it was a Spiller problem, then he should have been fumbling his whole career. Again, to me, this goes back to kind of like the drops, man. I don't know. You hold on to the football or you don't. At some point, the players have to accept the responsibility, man. It can't all be on the coaches. They got to go out there and execute and perform. And part of that, the most simplest part of that, is holding on to the football. Um, those guys have been coached and taught how to carry the ball since they were in rec league. Um, I don't know that fumbling is a coaching issue. I think it is a focus issue. I would make the argument that running backs were the most well coached position on the offensive side of the ball last year. Maybe not this year. I don't know. Again, I think the terrible play up front led to some uninspired efforts from those running backs at times. I think both of them played frustrated a lot of the year. And, that's hard to mask, man. It's emotional sport. Like, I go back to when Shipley, got kind of him and Spiller had that back and forth early in the season. That was because Spiller's pointing out to him something he did wrong, and he's trying to put it on the other guy. You know what I mean? So I don't know that. I don't think CJ Spiller is this weak link on the coaching staff that he's made out to be. I'll add this too about Mafah. Mafah's couple of Mafah's mistakes were like in the most inopportune time, the most critical junctures of games, just back-breaking, game-changing things. The fumble at Duke, on the one. Um, the missed block against Florida State gets Cade hit from the blind side, scoop, score, game-changing things. And those kind of mistakes tend to stick out more so than others. Um, is that right? Maybe not, but they do. That's human nature. I kind of tend to agree with this. It took Mafah to have a career high in yards for Shipley to find holes because instead of running in the back's line. Again, I think they both played uninspired at times this year. I think they both played frustrated, but I think Shipley's played his best ball since he came back from being hurt. And that just happens to coincidentally coincide with that monster game Mafah had against Notre Dame. Hmm. Drops is definitely a reflection of coaching. Well, I remember Clemson struggling with drops on the tail end of Jeff Scott's career too. So, good Lord, man, Frank Lasson couldn't catch a cold. Again, it's one of the most basic fundamentals of the game. Catch the football. All right, I have run long tonight, much longer than I was planning on going. I think my supper is in there getting cold. Don't forget, if you have not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Also, don't forget, me and Zach be right back here Wednesday night talking about the portal, coaching changes, Clemson using the portal, all that good stuff. Yeah, that's my daughter raising Cain about her food. Again, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Last thing, one more before we go, if I can find it again. If you're nudging players into the portal, they better have some money to actually get quality portal players. Clemson's got plenty of money in their NIL fund. Anybody saying they don't know what they're talking about. They're just not going to get into bidding wars, not in the portal, not in high school. All right, I can't remember where it was at, but somebody asked me about Xavier Thomas not living up to his 5-star status. That one's simple, man. Very, very simple. Injuries. That guy his career has been besieged by injuries. I think he has played his ass off this year. I think that guy has been exceptional. I think he gets held more often than he doesn't sometimes. Has it translated into a bunch of sacks? No, but he has been downright disruptive at times. I thought earlier in the season he was getting lost in the run game, covered up a little bit. Man, I haven't even noticed that. He was a force Saturday night against the run, against the pass. I mean, he was just being disruptive. Period. Can Clemson flip Lagway? No, Clemson's not making any effort to flip DJ Lagway. They're not taking a quarterback in 2024. And with that, I will bid y'all adieu. Again, don't forget, man, if you have not hit that subscribe button, hit that button, hit that like button, hit that notify me button, hit all of them. Join me and Zach right back here Wednesday night, 7 p.m. And of course, I'll be right back here next Monday night. We can talk about the bowl game. We'll know the bowl matchup. Maybe even a little Clemson basketball. We'll see if they can crack their way into the polls next week. A lot of that will hinge on what they do against Alabama tomorrow night. Big game for Brownhill and company. See y'all Wednesday, 7 p.m. Right back here. Appreciate all y'all tuning in, man.